Trucker Dump, episode 193. In today's episode, we got a possible new Secretary of Labor, we got a fight between a senator and the Teamster's president, there's rising pay for diesel mechanics, the Love's Travel Stop founder dies, I'll tell you about one high-tech and one low-tech product. Also, Cummins is rebranding its emissions-focused division, and apparently, truckers value praise more than anything else. Huh? All that and more news. We've also got some news follow-up in the listener feedback segment concerning hourly trucker pay and how Canada is spending their money to attract new truckers. So hey, in the immortal words of Lynyrd Skynyrd, turn it up.
Welcome to Trucker Dump, where you'll get one driver's insights and sometimes humorous views of truck driving and the trucking industry, and pretty much anything else he feels like dumping on you. This podcast is brought to you by AboutTruckDriving.com, resources that help you understand the world of truck driving through the use of stories and a pathetic attempt at humor.
Hey out there. I hope the road is treating you well this week. I'm sitting here in a hotel room in Rockford, Illinois on the 7th floor looking out over a snowy landscape and hoping that means I am still going to get out tonight. The roads don't look bad. Everything looks good for now. Temperatures are still above freezing. But always get a little antsy at this time, getting close to the end of the week and I'm wanting to get home and, snow falling. So hopefully they'll head me south out of here. South out of here? South out of here. So I guess for those of you who are new to the show, my name is Todd McCann. I'm a 25-year truck driver, most of that over the road, but the last 4 years or so I've been LTL, never been an owner-operator, never wanted to be, so you're in the wrong place if you're looking for that kind of information. I have, however, teamed with the evil overlord, who is my wife and ex-co-driver, of about 9 or 10 years of that, so I got some experience doing that. Have very little experience doing anything else other than driving a dry van and dealing with a woman in a truck. So there's that. That counts for something, right? But with all that time in the truck, I did have time to be productive, meaning I have written 2 trucking ebooks. One is called How to Find a Great Truck Driving Job, and the other is called Trucking Life. Trucking Life has a 9.25 hour audiobook included with it. The 50% off sale for that is now officially gone. I did manage to go into the website and get that updated. Looks like Dudley Munn and Lonnie Johnson were the last 2 to cash in on that just the day before I canceled it all. Well, actually the day of I changed everything. So congratulations to Dudley and Lonnie. But hey, the 50% deal is gone, but the 25% deal is always in effect. And that's just a discount for buying through my website instead of going to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Apple iBooks or wherever you can get your books individually. This is honestly a restriction on Amazon. If I could offer both books on Amazon for this price, I would, but they have weird restrictions and I can't do it. And they really limit what I can do with my own books. Not cool, but hey, if you're going to sell ebooks, you got to be on Amazon. So anyway, I haven't really said what this podcast is about in a long time, and the things I really like to focus on, and that is not owner-operator stuff, as I pointed out earlier. I don't know much about it. I have figured out that I don't have a lot of listeners who are owner-operators. I do have some, but the majority of you are company drivers. So what I try to focus on, and what I've been trying to focus on more lately, is things that will relate to every trucker and just stay away from stuff that is simply for owner-operators. So like there's a big story out right now that the government is thinking about getting rid of the federal excise tax for trucks. And okay, that's great. It seems to be on every website, but I'm not going to report it to you because if you're an owner-operator, you're probably already figuring that out from another source or whatever. But most of the listeners don't really care about that, right? Now, if it's something huge that's affecting owner-operators like the AB5 rule out in California, God knows we've talked about that to exhaustion, right? And guess what? More news on that a little bit, kind of touching on it today. Wow. It's the story that never goes away. Clearly. Sadly, I see it coming up way more in the future. Now, we'll get to that here in a second. But hey, before we get too much further, I have a confession to make. I have been complaining about things lately, complaining about the job and the way things are going, how my miles have been. And I've said it's not been a great week. I've said that for the last couple of weeks. And I remember specifically saying it last week. Well, guess what? I just had my biggest paycheck. So how does that work? Well, I tell you how that works. And that's because I drove over the road for so many years. I get used to judging my week on how many miles I'm getting and only the miles I'm getting. Now, that may seem accurate to you, those of you who are out there driving over the road right now, but I drive for a union LTO company now. So I get things that over the road drivers don't. Over the road drivers, they may get a little bit of detention, stuff like that. A little bit of extra pay for dropping or hooking or trailer or, things like that. But I get paid for pretty much everything here as a union employee. And I forget how much that adds up. My miles were not all that great last week, but I had 28 hours on the clock. That's from sitting around waiting on loads, having to go to bed early because there's no freight, things like that. Not to mention, I had my 4-year anniversary here, and the union also pays. Well, not the union. They don't pay anything, actually. They just made the agreement that the company will pay me for my anniversary date. So every year that I work here, when my anniversary date comes around, I can either choose to take that day off. Well, it falls anywhere in that week. So if it falls on like a Wednesday, I can take the Monday or the Friday off, to have a long weekend basically out of it. But if you choose to work, you get all the miles, all the hours you work, plus an additional 8 hours of pay. So I had that on this check too, and I completely forgot about that benefit. So I had a call from one of the drivers I mentored recently, earlier this morning, and he was saying, man, they're putting me to bed with 5 hours. And I said, well, join the crowd. I had 4.5, and another coworker of ours had probably 6 hours. And this guy had, like 5 or so. So, it happens sometimes, but I pointed out to him, and it reminded me myself to just keep in mind that, hey, just because you're not getting good miles does not mean you're having a bad week. And I'm still 4 years into that, and I still forget that sometimes. So I'm going to try to quit complaining about the bad weeks I'm having, even though I'm having another bad week. Only this time, it probably will be bad. I've had a couple of really short days, and I only have like 3 hours on the clock, and it is Thursday evening. So week's almost over and only 3 hours on the clock. It's probably not going to be pretty. Hopefully the evil overlord won't kill me when she sees the paycheck. All right, enough about that crap. Let's move on with the news. What say? Alrighty then, let's kick off the news with a little public service announcement from CDLLife.com. 2 Missouri rest areas permanently closing next week to reopen in fall 2023 as truck parking. Well, that about sums that up. Missouri has been doing this a lot lately. If you haven't noticed, on I-44, the westbound scale as you're heading out of Missouri, into Oklahoma or in the Joplin area, that scale used to be open like all the time. And they closed it permanently, and now it's truck parking. I think you can only fit maybe, 10, 14 trucks in there or something like that. But, hey, any parking helps. And we got the same situation going on here. These are a couple of rest areas. One's on I-29 near Dearborn, and that is about, where is that? That's about the 27-mile marker, but it's about halfway between St. Joseph and Kansas City. And the other one is I-35 near Lathrop. That's mile marker 35 approximately, and that's the one that's just north of the Pilot truck stop in Kearney, Missouri, or Kearney, however they pronounce that. So anyway, neither of these are huge rest areas, so they just are taking advantage of just knocking down the building and, adding additional parking. I think this is a good idea. They are going to have toilets there, by the way. They're just going to have what they call these vault toilets, which I'm seeing pop up a lot around Missouri at the rest areas. And they're decent facilities, as far as bathrooms go. They're not like a porta potty or anything like that. But, think about a rest area, right? How much unused space is in there? Sure, some people may go in there and look for brochures and stuff like that for things to do in the area, but largely, how often are those areas populated? Not at all. So a lot of it's just kind of useless, honestly. So looks like Missouri's just streamlining things, just knocking those buildings down, adding more parking, and I think that's a good thing. But just be aware, in case you're heading down I-29 or I-35 out of Iowa, you got one less place to go to the bathroom for the time being. Looks like they will open up in the fall of 2023. I will try to let you know if they put out a notice on when these things will be back open. I will let you know for sure. For details, head to cdllife.com. Or you can just click the link right there in the show notes. You'll find your show notes in your podcast app if you're using one. Or if you're not, there's two other ways to get those. You can subscribe to the newsletter. That's at abouttruckdriving.com. Just hit the subscribe button there, and it'll let you sign up for the newsletter. And I send all the links to everything I talk about directly to your email box. Or you can just go to abouttruckdriving.com and search for TD193, which is this episode. You'll see all the notes right there. And I apologize if you've heard me describe what show notes are a million times, and the ebooks for that matter. But hey, I have new listeners. Probably not every episode, but I never know when someone new is listening, and I don't want to leave them out of the loop. I always hated that when I'd come in and listen to a podcast and they had all these old inside jokes that nobody got. Well, that all the regular listeners got, but new people like me were like lost, and it will really alienate a new listener real fast. And I don't want to alienate anybody when it comes to this. I need all the listeners I can get over here. So, hey, anyway, like I said, check this one out on cdllife.com. Onward. Well, we're only one story in, and as I'm looking out this giant hotel window, it looks like the snow is starting to stick on the ground. Fabulous. Just love that. Well, anyway, you know who gets a heck of a lot more snow than the piddly stuff we're getting here right now? Idaho. And that's what we're focusing on for this next story. Landline.media. Online renewal for CDL holders is coming to Idaho. Now, I realize probably most of you don't live in Idaho, but this is, I hope, what's going to be coming in the future. They've been talking about making all of these online, to get your license renewed, to add your DOT card to your physical to your driver's license. What the hell am I trying to say here? They've been talking about this kind of stuff and updating the systems to where, where you get your DOT physical, it will automatically add it to your license without you having to go down there and go through all that rigmarole to get it done. So I'm hoping this takes place more in the future. They're saying it's going to, but here we have Idaho, you wouldn't really think would be on the cutting edge of technology, but here they are, allowing you to renew your CDL online. This is coming soon. This is not happening yet, but it is coming soon. So I hope the rest of the world, actually, not just the United States, follows this kind of thing, because it's really stupid to have to go stand in line, show these documents and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know what this is all going to involve, but I'm happy to scan any documents they want and email them to them, or right there online on their website, attach files, things like that. I got no problem with that. Maybe if you're old school and you're a Luddite and don't like technology, you're just going to go down to the DMV. But for anyone else who enjoys technology or tolerates it at least, personally, I don't ever want to walk into a DMV again. And I would think most people would be exactly like that too. So anyway, go check out the details on this one, landline.media. Like I said, probably ain't going to matter to you if you don't live in Idaho, but hey, you never know. Maybe it will be coming to a state near you soon. Okay, if you listen to this show at all, you have heard us talk about Love's travel stops quite a bit. And that's usually in terms of Love's opening a new truck stop. And in that case, I always say drink because it is so common on this show. Well, in this case, you're not going to want to drink unless you want to raise a glass to the owner, Tom Love, who passed away on March 7th. He was 85 years old. Now, this guy from the photo here on ttnews.com, that's Transport Topics, he looks like a jolly old fellow. I mean, he's got a great big grin on his face, just looks like a really fun guy to be around. And that is what all of this article talks about, what a great guy he was. And of course, we've all been to these funerals, haven't we, where the preacher or whoever is up there talking about the person who's deceased and they're talking about their love of life. Hate that phrase. And you know, what a great person they were. And you're thinking, really? Is this the same cranky old sourpuss that I knew? Because it sure doesn't sound like him. But you know, hey, once people are passed, we often tend to, flower over the situation, I guess. Well, if you read down through some of these quotes, he genuinely seemed like a cool guy who cared about his employees and, running his business with integrity and honesty and faith, he says, which I think is awesome. The now president of Love's, Shane Wharton, said Tom Love was a man of conviction who never wavered from the principles of honesty and integrity in the 59 years he spent developing the company he started with his wife, Judy. These tenets still guide our company and will as we move forward. Tom always listened and was sincerely interested in knowing the stories of employees and customers. Well, I hope that last statement is true, Mr. Wharton, because we all know companies, Walmart, who went downhill after their owners died. That was the same thing they said about Sam Walton. He was a really cool guy, really down to earth. I remember one time he walked into the store where I was working wearing overalls, bought some dog food, loaded it up in his pickup truck and took it back home. It's like he was pretty down to earth. And that's exactly what Tom Love sounds like. Now, I did not know this, but apparently Love's has an impact on how truck stops were, and actually just before truck stops, travels, like just your typical convenience store type thing. I guess in 1972, Love's brought a new concept to this kind of business, the country store, that combined like grocery and convenience store items with a self-service gas station. Who knew? I did not know this did not exist before that. I wonder if that's actually correct. But anyway, their first location was in Guyman, Oklahoma, and its new features were it had extended hours and it was open 7 days a week. Wow, what a concept. It's pretty par for the course now, isn't it? They opened their first travel stop in 1981 on Interstate 40 in Amarillo, Texas. I wonder if that's still the same one that's still standing there. It probably is. So anyway, this sounds like a guy I would have really liked to sit down and have a brew with. As the family statement here says, while the grief we feel is unmeasurable, we celebrate his life and will continue his legacy of living a life filled with integrity, honesty, and faith. And that is the kind of thing I can get behind. Integrity, honesty, and faith are all three very important things to me. So anyway, if you want to read all about Mr. Love here, head on over to ttnews.com. That's Transport Topics. And, well, rest in peace, Tom Love. And thanks for giving us another place to park. Hey, I found these next two on ccjdigital.com. That's Commercial Carrier Journal. Found both of these in the products section on their page. I don't usually talk about a lot of products, but when I find one that's cool or interesting, I will definitely bring it to your attention, even though you may not have anything to do with this, purchasing these items or anything like this. First one is one of those where it's probably not going to be up to you, but maybe it will just be included in the future. So what am I talking about here? The article is entitled, Your Batteries Are Trying to Tell You Something, and Soon They Will. So apparently right now, batteries rely on what they call this dumb technology where you just have to hook up something, hook up a meter to it and it will tell you in real time what the voltage is coming out of that and all that kind of stuff. Not an electrician. Sorry if I used the wrong term there. Amps, volts, I don't know. But there is a company called Clarios who apparently, as of right now, produces 1/3 of all batteries for passenger cars. They are fleet testing something called Smart AGM. That's absorbent glass mat batteries. These are for commercial vehicles. Now, what these are is there is a relay in there that can somehow transmit how the battery is doing via Bluetooth connectivity or CAN, which is, I don't know what that is. CAN. Anyway, what it does is it sends an alert through this software when your battery needs replacement. So if you think about that, that could really help fleets in the future and even owner operators. I mean, when do you usually discover that you have a battery problem? When you're sitting somewhere and your truck won't start. Well, wouldn't it be nice to know in advance that, hey, this battery is starting to crap out on you. You need to do something about it. Anyway, cool little technology there. I hope we start seeing this on all batteries. Of course, it would rely on the company, probably, your fleet owner to spend a little bit extra on these batteries, which may or may not happen. Anyway, hopefully this just becomes a standard one of these days. So anyway, the other one over here on Commercial Carrier Journal is something that I know you have dealt with in the past because I have too. Hey, great, a car alarm. That's just awesome. I don't know what these people are doing down there, but it's gone off about 2 or 3 times, and I'm getting sick of editing around it, so I'm just going to keep plugging away. So anyway, oh, God, that's so annoying. Don't know if I can do it. Nope, I can't. I'm going to have to stop. Hang on. Oh, just as I said, hang on, it stopped. Morons. All right. So anyway, as I was saying, if I can recollect my thoughts, if you're anything like me, you've been doing a pre-trip inspection and you get to the back of your trailer and you think, gee, it'd be nice if I could check my brake lights, but you can't unless your leg is about, 65, 70 feet long. You ain't going to be able to press down on that thing. Now, you could always wedge something like get a stick and wedge it in there between your seat and the brake pedal or something like that. Maybe that will work. Maybe it won't. But here is a device called a brake light buddy. Now, this is so simple. I don't know why people didn't think of this before, but head on over here, click a link in the show notes and just take a look at it. Basically, what it is it looks like a little sledgehammer, but it's got some cutouts that hook over your brake pedal. They've got models for regular pickups and cars, and they also have this larger model for semi-trucks. Now, they have 2 different models for the semi-trucks. One is designed to hook on the brake pedal that hangs down from underneath the dash, and the other is a floor-mounted brake pedal. But either way, what these things do is basically just hooks onto your brake pedal, and there's a large counterweight on the other end, and it is just enough to pull the brake lever down. Huh, cool. So this device does run about $100, but the CVSA, or the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, is that what that stands for? They say light failures are always top 5 for out-of-service violations. So, maybe it'd be worth your while, especially if you have a lot of different trucks. Interesting idea. I'm surprised nobody came up with it beforehand. Now, as the article points out, a lot of new trucks, like my new Peterbilt, has this feature on it where you hit a certain button, and it's like a pre-trip light check, and it'll cycle through all of the lights. It'll have just the regular parking lights on, then it will flash all lights, including the 4-ways, and then it will turn the brake lights on, and it will turn the bright lights on, back down to the dims, everything, so you can do your walk around. It'll just keep doing that until you're done with the pre-trip. It's great, but as this article points out, that is only checking whether the light, like your brake lights, work. Under this situation, sometimes it's actually the switch that is connected to the brake pedal that actually doesn't work. So if you've just pressed that button, it's not going to tell you anything about whether that brake pedal is actually activating the brakes, or the brake lights, I should say. Hopefully, if it's engaging the brakes. But anyway, this is just a neat concept. Very, very, very simple device. I'm surprised it's $100. It should be cheaper than that, it seems like. But hey, inflation, right? I guess. So anyway, if you're interested in those, go check out the links in the show notes for both of those articles over on ccjdigital.com. Cool ideas. Hope both of them succeed. Okay, found this next one on freightwaves.com. Here's a name you may be hearing more in the future. I think they're pronouncing it Accelera. Accelera. So who is Accelera? Well, they are Cummins, basically, only Cummins is rebranding what they're calling their new power division as Accelera. Basically, they feel like they're doing a lot of work towards the zero emission stuff. They've got hydrogen fuel cells, electronic axles, they're using batteries and electrification. They're just doing all kinds of things towards trying to get to this zero emissions thing, and they feel like they're not quite getting recognized enough for it because Cummins is recognized as a diesel engine maker. And, well, they probably got a point, right? So anyway, there's not much more to say about this one except for that, hey, you may be hearing the name Accelera in the future, and if you hear that name, think this is backed by Cummins, so it's probably good. Check this one out, freightwaves.com. So, hey, you know those rumble strips that are on the sides of most interstates and they will wake you up big time when you hit them as you're veering off towards the ditch because you're too tired to be driving? Yeah, those. Well, according to landline.media, there's going to be some more states that are implementing rumble strips in new and different ways. And that's probably good because the Federal Highway Administration has figures that show center line rumble strips reduce fatal injury crashes by 38% to 50% on rural two-lane roads and 37 to 91% on urban two-lane roads. So any reduction in fatal and injury crashes is good. So if rumble strips do the trick, then hey, have at it. So the three states they're talking about here are Iowa, Texas, and Connecticut. I'll give you a brief overview of what they're trying to do. Basically, Iowa is wanting these rumble strips to be placed in the road, like across your pathway, so you will hit them before all stop signs and traffic-controlled signals on a highway where the highway enters or crosses a primary highway. So basically, big intersections. Think about that. We've got some of those out by our terminal, and you hit those rumble strips just before you come upon a roundabout. I've seen that quite a bit with roundabouts out in the middle of nowhere, especially when they're new roundabouts and people aren't expecting them to be there. So that's kind of what they're looking at. Texas is just in the early stages of this. They're just basically saying studies need to be done so they can figure out where to put these. Connecticut is mainly talking about using them on entrance and exit ramps. This one's interesting. They say from 2019 to 2021, there were 12 crashes where the vehicle was going the wrong way on the road. But in 2022 alone, they had 13 wrong way crashes in the state of Connecticut. So they're saying they got about 16 high-risk ramp locations where they want to install these rumble strips. So I guess if you start to go on to an interstate backwards, you would be like, I shouldn't be doing this. So maybe it'll wake you up. Anyway, like I say, not a lot to report here. Just wanted to let you know that, hey, you might be seeing some more rumble strips, or feeling more rumble strips, I guess would be more accurate, in the future. How many times have you been surprised by a rumble strip? Of course, if you're doing things right, and you never hit those white lines or the yellow line, and you're never crossing a line and you're a perfect driver, you'll never feel a rumble strip, unless, of course, it's all the way across the road like they're talking about doing with these stop signs and traffic signals, stuff like that. Anyway, I'll quit rambling about that one because I'm starting to not make sense at all. Par for the course. Let's move on. It wouldn't be a Trucker Dump podcast unless there's at least one article that I don't fully understand. Well, this time it's on ccjdigital.com. That's Commercial Carrier Journal. FMCSA closes reporting loophole in Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse database. Now, I think I understand this one, but I'm not sure. And just to show you why I'm so confused, let me read the first really long sentence in this article. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration is closing a loophole in its drug and alcohol clearinghouse that makes it possible for a driver to have a drug or alcohol violation reported by another employer after a pre-employment query, but before the next annual one. I think if I was an editor, I'd have looked at that and said, hey, can you reword that sentence a little bit? That is really confusing. But hey, that's just me. I'm not an editor, obviously. I'm just a dumb truck driver. But anyway, here is the way I understand this. I think what this means, again, if I'm wrong, correct me by sending me an email at truckerdump@gmail.com. But I think what was happening was, say a driver failed a drug test and they would get fired. And before anybody knew about this, before it was reported to the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse, they had already gotten a new job. And I think that's the loophole that they're closing. I'm not exactly sure how they're doing that, according to this article, but apparently it has to do with more reporting. Now, again, I don't understand that unless it's immediate reporting, which it doesn't say that. I don't really know how this is going to help because, a driver's just going to get fired for not being able to pass a drug screen. And then he goes on to the new job and say they let him in, which I don't know. Maybe the idea behind that is he's going to have a new drug screen, but I don't know. Anyway, like I said, I'm confused by all this one. Imagine that. Check it out, ccjdigital.com. Hey, if you're anything like me, you've probably thought before in the past, how the heck can I get out of this stupid truck driving industry? I know that back in the day when I was doing this podcast, I had all kinds of episodes on, the frustration I had with trucking and how I was looking for other things to do, including dispatching. I was looking at different jobs within trucking companies. I was looking at even going back to school to go to pharmacy and getting out of the industry completely. Well, I've pretty much, just accepted the fact that I'm going to be a truck driver for the rest of my life, and I'm getting paid well to do it, which really helped my decision when I came to LTL and started making a lot more money. I thought, yeah, maybe I will just stick here and not go back to school. But regardless, if you are one of those type of people and you have any skill mechanically, you might want to think about becoming a diesel mechanic. There's an article over here on ccjdigital.com that will describe what I'm talking about. Apparently there was a survey done by a company called Full Bay, and they are a provider of heavy-duty truck and trailer repair shop management software. They have figured out that labor costs are going up, surprise, surprise, but that most of that is going towards tech pay. And by tech pay, they mean mechanics. So 76% of respondents said they raised labor rates in 2022. Now, if you're like me and you don't pay any attention to this stuff because you never really pay the bill on any of these truck bills, check this out. The highest average labor rate can be found in the Western U.S. That's $137 an hour. That's $24 higher than the next four regions that are separated by no more than $2. So you got $113 in the Midwest and Northeast, $115 in the Southwest, and $114 an hour in the Southeast. That's according to Full Bay. So the beauty of this is 92% of the shops that did have labor raises passed these raises along to the technicians, or at least some raises. They said even shops that didn't raise labor rates, 42% of them gave their technicians a pay bump anyway. So what exactly are you going to make as a diesel mechanic nowadays? Well, according to this, the highest paid techs in the country come from the Southeast. They're averaging $46 an hour. The second closest is the West at $44.60 an hour. Northeast is $44.50 an hour, and Southwest is $41.90 an hour. The Midwest by far brings in the least amount, $11 less, $35.10 an hour on average. Wonder why it's so much cheaper here in the Midwest. Probably just because it's cheaper to live, I guess. Cost of living, I guess that's probably it. But even here at the lowest pay, $35.10 an hour is pretty darn good for around here. But of course, you're not just getting that, because where there's work, there's usually overtime. And this says that 45% of technicians responded that they work more than 40 hours per week. 23% were working more than 50 hours a week. So that's a lot of overtime there. So anyway, this article goes into a lot of detail about all of this survey. One interesting thing I found in here was only 21% of technician respondents attended a trade school. I would have thought that would have been higher, like, a diesel mechanic trade school kind of a thing, but apparently not. I guess there's lots of people who just learn this stuff on their own. That's interesting. Either that, or it's just that the technicians are aging older and they just learn the old school way, by working on engines themselves. That's very interesting. So anyway, lots of good stuff in this article if you're interested in that. And even if you're not interested in becoming a diesel mechanic like me, I could probably barely change out a battery if I needed to. But hey, if you've got the skills and you're looking to get out of the trucking industry, now might be a good time to look into becoming a diesel mechanic. ccjdigital.com for more information about that. Oh boy, this next one really sucks. overdriveonline.com. OOIDA opposes Biden's pick to head up Labor Department. So if you were unaware, like me, the current Labor Secretary, his name is Marty Walsh, he announced on February 16th he's going to be leaving in mid-March, and oddly enough, he's going to become the executive director of the National Hockey League Players Association. Okay, that's kind of a weird change, government to the National Hockey League. Huh. Okay, well, whatever. But the point of contention here is Biden's pick for the new Labor Department is a lady named Julie Su. She currently serves as the Deputy Secretary of the department, and she's held that position since July of 2021. Okay, so it means she's probably lined up nicely to do the job, but here is the problem. Before she came to the Department of Labor on the federal level, she was the Labor Secretary for California. Yeah. Well, it wouldn't be a Trucker Dump podcast if I didn't bash California at least once. So here we go. So you can imagine where this is heading. OOIDA, of course, is the Owner-Operator Independent Driver Association, and the thing they really don't like about her is she was in full support of the AB5 stuff that's going on out there, which effectively banned the traditional leased owner-operator model in the state. And other states are probably going to be following suit with this. And if you've got this person who supported that in California heading the Department of Labor, where do you think we're heading with that one? Federal AB5 rules. Well, they won't be called AB5, but still, it'll be virtually the same thing. Yikes. Boy, this is something I don't want to happen, but honestly, it will probably happen. She's lined up perfectly for the job. She's already, second in command over there, it looks like. So, yeesh, what a mess. Overdriveonline.com if you want to get really depressed. Okay, this next article was pointed out to me by a friend and ex-coworker, a lady named Gina. Well, she would laugh that I called her a lady, but yeah. She was in the Navy, and you can tell by her mouth. Yeah, but anyway, found this one on foxnews.com. This one has a video attached to it. The article is titled, GOP Senator Snaps at Union Boss During Heated Hearing. Shut your mouth. Okay. Well, he does say that. So, all right. This is union related, so you may or may not care about it whatsoever, but it's going to give me a chance here to just clear up just a couple of little things about the union that you may have not heard before. Because this Republican Oklahoma senator named Mark Wayne Mullen, Mark Wayne is a, wow, that's two names put together into one. Mark Wayne. Huh. Interesting. Anyway, if you're seeing the video, if you go over here and watch it, it's not that long. They clashed. They talked about O'Brien, who is the head of the, Sean O'Brien, who is the head of the Teamsters, and he was particularly picking on him. I personally don't like this because I don't feel like all Republicans. I am a Republican. I'm a conservative. Of course, the Democrats are the ones who are known to be for labor, but oftentimes they don't make good decisions for labor. So, anyway, I'm not convinced that Democrats are all for labor and Republicans are all against labor unions. I'm really not. But in this case, this gentleman clearly was. Of course, he started out his statement by saying, I'm not against unions at all. But then he went on real attack mode to the point where even Bernie Sanders, who's the chair of this committee here, was trying to get the senator to shut up, but he wouldn't do it. They turned into a big shouting match. At one point, the Republican even said he's not afraid of a fight, like a physical altercation. So, of course, Sean O'Brien being out of Boston's like, yeah, are you a tough guy or what? I mean, it was like it sounded like something out of Goodfellas, But anyway, there's lots of accusations being thrown around here. One being that, and both sides had their points, although Mullen got to say a lot and O'Brien barely got to defend himself at all. So Mullen states in here that he started this business, a little plumbing business, and raised it up, and he had better wages and better benefits and everything than union employees have, which may or may not be the case because union employees usually have really good pay and benefits. But anyway, that's his claim. And he said, because he had plumbers working for him that the local plumbing union, can't remember what they're called, pipe fitters maybe, they come out and basically intimidate him, leaning up against his truck, picketing his business and stuff like that. And, Mr. Mullen's point is that, hey, Mr. O'Brien, if you're for labor and you're for worker, you should let the workers choose, whether they want to work for a union company or not. You shouldn't be intimidating those who don't want to join a union. And with that, I agree with him completely. Unions can get a little out of, especially back in the day, back in the 40s and 50s, they were a little overbearing, shall we say, turn to violence sometimes, things like that. And that's not a good thing. So I agree with him on that part, but on many other things, he was just blatantly wrong about this. One, he points out O'Brien's salary was $193,000. Now, I'm not one of those people who thinks people are overpaid if they run a big organization. You've got a lot of responsibility on your hands, a lot of jobs on the line. $193,000. It does not seem that ridiculous to me. I don't have a problem paying my union dues that support that. So as long as he's doing the job, that's good. Now, I was not a big fan of Hoffa Jr. Many Teamsters were not because he was a corporate kiss butt and just gave them anything they wanted. And he still got those high wages and probably got a lot of kickbacks on top of that too. So anyway, not a fan of that. Man, I hope I don't get kneecapped for talking about the union like this. But anyway, no, it's really not like that as much anymore. But, so anyway, one thing that Mr. Mullen was completely wrong about was he flat out said that O'Brien didn't do anything to create jobs, that he's just sucks off the paychecks of employees. And well, I see what he's getting at because, the Teamsters have never started a business or anything like that. But here's the thing I kind of wanted to get straight about this because O'Brien never gets a chance to answer this question in here. And I'm taking that opportunity, if you watch this video, to explain how this works. So unions, the way they work is they have clearly defined definitions of what your job is and what is not your job. For instance, as an over-the-road truck driver, you're dropping and hooking your own trailers all the time, right? It's just part of the job. But as a union employee, I'm a line haul driver. I am not supposed to be dropping and hooking trucks and trailers normally. Under certain circumstances I can, but if there are city drivers there, city workers there, that's their job. Now you may think, well, that's stupid. Well, that's what I thought when I first came here too, but that is job security. It gives city workers extra work to do. And that's something that they can do and take off the hands of a road driver. Road drivers are usually happy to do that. They can fuel our trucks too. I'm fine with that, but that's job security for them. Now, what happens is sometimes a company will say, well, they try to start getting their road drivers to do this work for them. And basically what that does is saying, is keeping the company from having to hire somebody to do those other jobs by getting us to drop and hook our own trailers or by getting us to fuel our own tractors. Basically, they're not having to hire more employees. So that is how unions create jobs, by making sure you have a clearly defined job classification and you stay within that classification. And if you veer out of that classification, if the company forces you to do that, you file a grievance on it. The company has to pay a fine or a penalty, and it supposedly makes them quit trying to make you step out of your own bounds. So I wanted to clear that up because Mr. Mullins is just flat out wrong about this. Another thing he's flat out wrong, and Mr. O'Brien did have an opportunity to correct him on this one, but that he said, I could not believe this when I heard this. He said UPS feeder drivers make an average of $35,000 a year. What? Now, if you don't know what a feeder driver is, that is their tractor trailer drivers who, move stuff over long distances. And those are some of the best paid employees that they have. O'Brien quickly straightened them out and said, no, our drivers make anywhere from 95. I can't remember if he said 95 or 105. I think he said 105 all the way up to $150,000 a year. So boy, was Mullen wrong about that. I don't know where he got these numbers. Anybody who knows anything about UPS knows that even like their local delivery drivers don't make anywhere close to $35,000. It's not even close. They're probably up around the $70,000, $80,000 range would be my guess. I don't know for sure, but probably the only people who are making $35,000 at UPS is probably the part-time employees who come in and help, during the holidays and stuff like that. So anyway, this, like I said, this was a big screaming match. You're welcome to go over here and watch it if you want to see how this altercation went down. But O'Brien was having none of it, but he really didn't have any opportunity to speak and defend himself. So anyway, all that you probably don't care anything about, but I found it very interesting as a Teamster. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. If not, just skip over this foxnews.com article. And let's finish up with this article on transport topics. That's ttnews.com. And I would like to get your feedback on this one. Truck drivers appreciate company praise, survey shows. So this survey was done by a company called Workhound, who is a company who specializes in retaining employees. And they did this survey, and one of the things they found was that drivers, one of their top things was they want to be praised by their company. Is this a thing? I mean, I get an attaboy every now and then, like, hey, you're doing a great job for us. Thank you. But I just don't get it. Maybe it's just a personality thing, but I just feel like if I'm doing my job, I don't need to be praised for it as long as they're paying me well for it and they're treating me okay. I don't feel the need for all of the extra stuff. Like I know some drivers get all giddy about getting a jacket when they get 1,000,000 miles, or, they reach some kind of a time, I've worked with this company for 20 years or whatever, and you get a watch or something. I don't get that at all. If you want to reward me, just give me some cash. I don't understand the draw of hats and jackets and watches and plaques and stupid crap like that. Is that just me? I feel like it must be, because this survey clearly shows that drivers like to be praised for their work. I don't know. Of course, other top issues they talk about was pay, and another big one was home life work balance. And I have talked about that quite a bit on here, and how the trucking industry seems to be going for this model of getting you home more often and giving you more home time and not keeping you out on the road for weeks and weeks at a time. I've been talking about that for ages on this podcast. That seemed the way it was going. And well, looky here. Here's yet another survey that says that is very important to drivers. Interesting. If you remember recently, we talked about how when pay started going up during COVID and right after COVID and the inflation and everything, pay rates were going up for truck drivers. And they thought that would make truckers work more. But in reality, what it actually did was make them work less because they were making more. They were able to take off some sufficient home time for a change of pace. So I found that really interesting at the time. And this seems to confirm it that, hey, home time is even more important than it's always been. And by that, I don't just mean getting home on time when you've been out for 3 or 4 weeks. I mean, like daily home time or weekly home time. And I get that. I'm an LTL driver now and I get home once a week, whether, that's in the contract. I have to get home and thankfully it's on the weekend. Right now that may change in the future, but for now that is at least one day on the weekend. So I get the importance of it and I get that I really don't want to go back to over the road. So I guess I fall into that category. But one thing I do not fall into the category of is a jacket. I don't care about your stupid jacket. I don't care about a stupid watch that has the company name on it. I'm never going to wear that stuff. Give me some cash or something like that if you want to appreciate what I do. Well, share your thoughts with me on that. Am I wrong about this or am I just weird? Or I don't know. Transport topics. That's ttnews.com. And of course, you can email me at truckerdump@gmail.com. Look forward to hearing what you have to say about this. So I guess that will do it for the news this time around. As far as I know, there's no Trucker Grub segment either. Although, you know me, I've overlooked stuff in the past. I could easily have overlooked something. But I don't think so. So let's just move on to listener feedback.
Hey, yo, bud, where do you want this load of feedback?
All right. Well, we heard from Trucker Smack in the last episode, and I did mention that we had another comment from him. So let's just get on with it. I think this one is about hourly pay.
Hey, Todd and Trucker Dumpers. It's Trucker Smack. I've got a comment on TD187 when you were talking about some government agencies talking about whether or not they want to do hourly and if that's something good and if the industry wants to do that. I just wanted to throw out this comment. Me personally, I think that the way that your company does things, specifically the union really, but the hybrid type model where you have hourly if something goes wrong or you're not being used or whatever situations you're sitting at a dock, and then also having a cent per mile. Just sort of thinking about these things, I think one of the things that would have to get figured out is, well, how would you figure out what that hourly rate would be? And there's numbers that you can be thrown out, but the way I would sort of do it is I would take whatever your cent per mile is, and you need to figure out how many miles or how many miles you could have ran in a day. So I'll just use my truck. I'm at 68. So 68 times 11 is 748 miles in a day. If I ran 100% of my 11-hour clock. So you take that number, multiply it by the cent per mile, whatever number that is. Then you can take that and you can divide it by an 8-hour day, and there's your hourly rate for a day. And I think that would be a fair way of figuring out a good, in my opinion, bare bones. This is what you would have been able to make if you actually ran hourly rate. I would argue for a little bit more, maybe $1 or $2 more, say, hey, let's throw $1 or $2 more at this driver an hour if they're sitting around. And not only does it take that financial pressure off of the driver, it also makes them feel more comfortable just being out here on the road, makes them feel more comfortable working for that particular company or whoever that does that model. It also, keeps drivers in a better mood because it's like, hey, I'm still making money even though I'm sitting in that stock for the last 8 hours. So a lot of those things, I think doing that would solve a lot of those issues and solve a lot of those problems that you see that we all experience out here in the industry. And I think that would be a really fair way of doing it. And I hope that enough smart people out there will get together and be like, hey, this is a good thing. Let's start doing this. I would be surprised to see it in my lifetime because we both know that this is going to be expensive and that a lot of companies aren't going to want to do this. So, well, hopefully you get this, and I'll hear it on the next podcast. Thanks. Trucker Smack out.
Ding, 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 ding. We have a winner. Yes, Trucker Smack, you pegged it right there at the end. This is why this will never happen, is because it will cost them too much money. It's the same reason we still have companies that are using the Rand McNally or the Household Mover Guide when we have pretty much practical miles just by using modern GPS software. It's insane. But anything to save a buck, right? But hey, I do agree with you completely that this pay by the mile and pay by the hourly is a great model. Like I talked about at the beginning of this episode, boy, it really made up a huge difference in me having a crappy week or me having a normal week. And like I said, even though I was complaining about having a bad week, I am so less stressed with this job than I was out there on the road. I was always freaking out well, I got better at it once I got a PlayStation 2 in the truck with me, years ago, and I'd chill out a bit. But before that, I'd just be chomping at the bit. If I was sitting in a dock and they weren't loading me on time or they hadn't been on my trailer yet, I was like, man, what's going on? And freaking out. And the evil overlord would be saying, just shut up, chill out. Ain't nothing you can do about it. Well, she kind of got tired of it, like I said, and eventually bought me a PlayStation to chill me out, and it worked. But that is just the way I am. I don't like to just sit. I still don't like sitting, but if I'm in the middle of my shift and I go in, they don't have any freight and somebody's loading a trailer or whatever, and they say, oh yeah, we'll have something in here in a little bit, have a seat. I'm okay with that now. I'll just get my phone out or whatever and do whatever I feel like doing, and I know I'm getting paid for it, and I'm pretty relaxed about it. So you're definitely right about the relaxing part of the job. Another thing that the union does, at least, well, I don't know if all unions do it, but the one I'm in, the Teamsters do it, is there is an 8-hour minimum guarantee. So if I only get 100 miles that day, some weird instance takes place, like a breakdown and, they don't have equipment for me or whatever, and they put me away, or like that instance last week I was talking about where I was in the ice storm and I couldn't go anywhere. 8 hours pay automatically. Now, as for that pay per hour, how much that should be that you were talking about, I did the math on my thing according to your formula, and I would be making a lot more per hour than I am now. Almost double. So I don't think what you're saying seems fair because you aren't driving, but at the same time, you aren't driving. You know what I mean? You're just sitting. And I think that's why we, I think that's why we get paid less per hour than we do driving down the road. The way I have it figured is it's probably about 2/3. I can make about 2/3 sitting as I can what I would be driving, if that makes sense. I'd like to give you exact numbers, but I don't really feel like sharing my wage. So we'll just let you figure that out. But anyway, that number you gave was extremely high, but yes, it would be completely fair, but there's no way they're ever going to do that. And they're certainly not going to add on that extra couple bucks an hour you were talking about. There's another model I've talked about before on here that's straight hourly, but they pay hourly different depending on how much to whether you're driving or you're just on duty. So that part is interesting to me, that whole model. I think that's, what's the name of that? Liquid Transport, I think, is the name of that company. I think they also go by Schmidt or something like that. I've checked into them in the past, but yeah, they pay a particular wage for driving, probably based on, a general miles per hour. And like you were talking about, how much you can do in a day. But then when they're getting a trailer washed out or something like that, it's just automatically switches from on duty to on duty, and you're just getting paid an hourly rate, wage, which is less than what you'd make driving. But that seems logical because you're just sitting there, right? I don't have a problem with that whatsoever. Like I said, it takes way more stress off me. I don't have that kind of stress in my life. And that's one more good thing about the job that I have. So may I suggest, if you're tired of getting screwed around at these places, then look for a union job. Just saying. Man, this has really been heavy on the union stuff today, hasn't it? Sorry about that. All right, let's move on. All right, let's hear from a gentleman who calls himself Maverick in the Trucker Dump Slack group. He has a comment about a news story we covered in the last episode, and that was about how Canada was putting federal money into finding truck drivers and forklift drivers too, and logistics personnel, that kind of thing. And I was questioning the amount of money that was going into that. I think it was 46 million, I think is what it was that they were going to be dumping into this program. And I thought, boy, that's really high considering they were only going to get 1,400 truck drivers out of it. And then some additional training for forklift and stuff like that. So anyway, Maverick wanted to look into this. He writes, well, you brought up the Canadian federal funding of truck training and you said it looked a little high. After the podcast, I decided to see what the feds were spending the money on, being that it is likely my tax dollars at work funding this program. So yes, you are correct that funding the training of 1,400 truck drivers seems high, which at current rates would be about 14 million plus GST. What's that? 15.8 million. But there's a second component that most of the articles don't go into, and that is a wage subsidy program and forklift training course. Forklift training is fairly cheap, so they will likely spend another $10 million on that, and then the rest will be used as a wage subsidy for employers to hire these employees. So to make it super simple, it is a large company welfare scheme. They will fund the training of a number of workers to get them into the industry and then also fund part of the low wages that they are going to pay these drivers for the next few years. So they are pretending to help the problem with the driver shortage, but in reality, they are just allowing the big fleets here to continue the practice of paying lower wages to drivers and knowing full well by the time the funding runs out for these programs that 75% of the drivers will have already left the industry. Well, that's grim, Maverick, but sadly, it's probably true. You know, I should have known about this and I should have thought about that subsidy program stuff because I know my company does that too. I've complained about not getting paid for training here before, for training new drivers, as a driver trainer. And, some of our weird practices and the way they do things, with their truck driving schools and stuff. And I'm just like, how can they make money doing this? I was a little confused by it, but of course they're getting federal subsidy for this. Of course they are. Now, I didn't know about the subsidizing the low wages that they plan on paying them because, well, that's not an issue at my company. They come in at normal rate like anybody else. Well, for the union anyway. It's kind of a tiered step the way they do it here. You don't start out at 100% automatically. You start out at like 90, depending on where you're at. But, yeah. Very interesting. I'm glad you looked into this and I'm glad you brought that up because I really wasn't thinking about all those subsidies. But of course, there's government involved. So of course there's subsidy. And of course there's bailing out of large corporations. That's the way things work. Apparently in Canada as well as the United States. So thanks for that, Maverick. Now, I do have another bit of feedback from Maverick, but I am going to save that for the next episode just to make sure I still have something. A little insurance policy there. So I guess that'll about do it for this episode. Or is it? Did I get you, Trevor? I bet I did, didn't I? I bet you were cussing me right now saying, he forgot again. He forgot again. No, I didn't forget again. All right, let's hear from Trevor. He's got a story of an incident that happened to him when he was just a young pup driver. Take it away, Trevor.
Hey there, Trucker Dumpers. This is Trevor Dunkel speaking. I go by the name of Kool-Aid Overdose in the Trucker Dump Slack group. And apparently I was dogged into telling you my story about low clearance bridges. I don't even know what being dogged means, but apparently that's what I had happen to me.
Yep, you got
Thanks,
dogged.
Todd.
Woof woof.
So basically, my story is just being a new driver that trusted a little too much in the truck navigation systems, and then I went against my better judgment when I realized the situation I found myself in. This happened the first time I had to alter my normal sleep schedule in order to pick up from a shipper at the right time and still give myself enough time after the pickup to have some good miles for the day. I was picking a load up somewhere around Chicago. It was dark and pouring rain, and it was in the late evening, so there was still quite a bit of traffic. It's like late rush hour, I would say. The truck navigation system that was in my truck would almost always say to take the exit when the exit was coming up, but for whatever reason, it said to continue straight. I looked over at the navigation system and I saw that the route was bearing onto the exit ramp, but by that point, it was too late for me to merge over and take the exit safely. So I just continued straight, and then immediately after missing my exit, there was a low clearance sign that said 13 foot 5 inches. I was about a quarter of a mile ahead, and so I went basically the quarter of a mile until I got to the bridge, and I pulled off to the side of the highway, and I just parked and kind of sat there and tried to figure out what I was going to do next. My company policy at the time was to find the number for the local police so that they could come out and provide escort service to get me back in the right direction and not cause any problems. So I called the police and they tell me that they're going to have somebody come out and give me a hand. And so while I'm sitting there waiting on the shoulder, I had a personal vehicle pull up beside me, and turns out the guy that was in that personal vehicle, he was a local truck driver, and he explained to me that trucks can get under the bridge as long as they stay in the far right lane. And I thanked them for the information, but I figured I'd wait for the police to come to decide whether or not I was even going to try to go under the bridge. Um, when the police came, the officer asked if I wanted to back up to the exit that I missed or if I wanted to try to go under the bridge. And, at this point, I had only been driving truck for 10, 11 months, something like that. And, I didn't think I had the ability to back up at night in the rain with rush hour traffic on the shoulder of the road for a quarter of a mile.
Mm-hmm.
It just it scared me to think about trying to do that. So I told the police officer that I would try to go under the bridge, and I don't know if I forgot what the local truck driver had told me, or if I felt that the bridge looked taller on the far left lane, but that's what I decided to do. I decided to take the far left lane, and I went super slow, 3, 4, maybe 5 miles an hour as I was trying to get under that bridge, and the police officer was behind me to keep the traffic from getting up on me. And so we start getting under the bridge, and I get about maybe halfway to 3/4 of the way through the bridge, and that's when I noticed there was a sharp metal shard hanging down from one of the bridge's rafters.
Uh-oh.
And so I knew at that point that I should have stopped, but I also knew that I was pretty far invested in getting under this bridge, and I was nervous with all the traffic around, and I was causing a big scene, and so I felt pressured to just keep going. So that's what I did, and I ended up making it another 40 feet or so before I started hearing some scraping and crunching noises, and it was at that point that I knew that I'd probably messed up.
You think?
But, I tried to keep going and plowing through it, and I made it maybe another 5 or 10 feet, and then I couldn't move. And so I realized I couldn't move, and I backed up a little bit, and I tried again, and I made it maybe another 5 feet, and then it stopped again, and I couldn't move at all. So at that point, I pulled the brakes and I got out of the truck and I talked with the police officer, and I told him that I'm stuck. And the officer, he asked me if I could drop the trailer suspension, and I had no idea what he was talking about, because the company that I drove for didn't have trailers that had trailer suspensions that you could drop. You could drop the air on. And so when he said drop your suspension, I just figured, okay, he means to drop the suspension on the tractor, dump the airbags and try it that way. But as I know now, and I'm sure that most of you can guess, that the only thing that dropping the truck suspension did was raise the rear of the trailer and making it even harder to move through the bridge.
Yeah, that's how levers work.
So I went ahead and I did that, and of course that didn't work. And so I put the airbags back up on the truck, and then I decided, I'll just back up and I'll move over to the far right lane and try that. And I was able to get through at that point. And the police officer, once we got through, he escorted me back to where I needed to go, and so I could figure out how to get to the shipper I was supposed to. And so the funny thing is, after that whole ordeal happened, I get to the shipper and find out that they were closed until the next morning. And I called dispatch and let them know that they were closed, and they told me to drop the trailer and wait for the loaded trailer in the morning. And I happened to omit the fact that I had hit the bridge, and I was definitely too afraid to open the back of the trailer up to see if there was any damage or what had happened.
Yeah.
To the trailer. And so basically I just dropped the trailer like I was told to, and I sat bobtail in their drop yard for the night and went to bed. And I got up the next morning to talk to the shipper and get the loaded trailer and get the paperwork for the next load. And as I'm walking over to the shipping office, I see the yard jockey for this shipper. He was in the process of pulling the empty trailer that I had dropped off the night before back out of their dock after they had put it in, because evidently they noticed there was some damage to the trailer.
You think?
And as they're doing this, the yard jockey waves me down, flags me down, and tells me, that they can't use the trailer and that I need to take it away. That was the moment I was dreading, because I didn't want to have to own up to my mistake of hitting the bridge and causing trailer damage and everything. But I had to man up and get it done. And so I called dispatch and I let them know what happened. And after all that was said and done, I didn't get a load from that shipper like I was supposed to. And I had to take the damaged trailer that I brought there back to the terminal in Gary, Indiana. So from there, I picked up a relay load at that Gary, Indiana terminal, and I was told to go to my home terminal. But I wasn't really given an explanation as to why I was supposed to go to my home terminal, but I just kind of figured, well, I'm probably getting fired because I messed up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it turns out that once I got to my home terminal, they just wanted to sit down and talk with me about what happened and take a safety class to try to keep me from doing the same mistake again in the future. So I get all that done, and after the class was over, my dispatcher, he pulled me off to the side and he said, after I've heard your story and everything that happened, and with all the negative things that would make it more difficult to back up as opposed to trying to go under the bridge, he said, with all that in mind, I probably would have done the same thing. I would have tried to go under the bridge. So it made me feel a little better that, I ultimately, yeah, I made the wrong decision, but other people can see where my choice, my decision, where it would have come from, and it made me feel better. So, you know, that's my story of a low clearance bridge issue. And as a final note, I just want to mention that through that whole situation, that whole hitting the bridge and everything, I was never fined or ticketed for hitting the bridge. So either the cop was in a really good mood or he just didn't want to get wet in the rain. So, I guess I was lucky in that regard. But yeah, that's all I got. Thanks, Todd.
No, thank you, Trevor, for submitting to my guilt trip. We've all been in these situations before, especially when we're new. Something happened. We realized we were in a pickle. We got a little flustered. We didn't make a good decision. Usually we do something that compounds the problem. And, thankfully you didn't get a ticket out of this, but you got the damage. The one thing you did wrong here, as you know by now, I'm sure your company told you, is you did not report it. And that's understandable though, because, as a new driver, you think I'm going to get in trouble for this. I'm going to get fired just like you thought. They're routing you back to your terminal. Oh my God, I'm going to get fired. Oh, I've spent all this money and effort trying to become a truck driver and now it's gone. Now, I don't blame you. I totally understand. I think a lot of drivers listening to this right now understand that situation, but it is never good to not report damage unless you are 100% sure no one saw it. And, that you might be able to get away with it. Just drop that trailer, perfect example would be like, you pick up a trailer at a customer or something and you go to pull it out and you turn a little sharp and you rub up against something, you back that trailer right in the door, or right back where it came from, you unhook and go find a different trailer and no more the wiser. Now, I'm not advising that. I'm just saying, well, people do it, just saying. But anyway, yes, the lesson learned from this, of course, if you are a new driver and your company has hired you as a new driver right out of school, or they've even trained you themselves, they are expecting you to make some of these screw ups. You're going to do it. If you don't do it, you're an oddball. Honestly, if you don't screw up ever, you're just an odd case. People screw up, especially when you're new. You get flustered, like Trevor said, very easily. You're overwhelmed by the situation. I don't blame you at all for not thinking or for thinking that you didn't have the ability to back up in Chicago rush hour traffic, even late rush hour traffic, in rain on those streets in the middle of the night. Yeah, I don't blame you whatsoever. We've all made mistakes like that. I'm glad you learned from them, and I'm glad now you're at a job that is so perfect for you. And I'm still a little jealous that you made more than me on your, second year? I think it was your second or third year. I think we decided you made more than me, and I had been driving for 22 years. So thankfully I've remedied that now and I make more than you, which is the way life should be. So anyway, thank you for the story, Trevor. I hope somebody listening to this got some good information out of it and could relate to it. And if you can't relate to it now, you may in the short, distant future. So just keep the story in mind the next time you are in a pickle and you think you're about to make a mistake. Well, stop and rethink it all through again, okay? It never hurts to be overcautious in a truck. So I guess that will do it for this episode. Thank you to Gina for suggesting the Fox article about, the Teamster and the senator fighting, although she doesn't listen to the podcast, I don't think. So she was just pointing that to me in general. But regardless, it made it to the show. Thanks to Maverick and Trucker Smack and, of course, Kool-Aid, which I finally got around to. You're welcome. Well, as I look out the window now, there is about an inch on the ground at least, probably more. I got my work call for 9:30 p.m., so I'm going to get my butt over there ASAP and try to get out early and get moving. Apparently, I'm going to Akron, which is probably just going to have me driving in this crap all night long. Yay! But hey, I'm going to try not to complain about it. Who am I kidding? I'm going to complain. Later. You know, I've really been enjoying these breakdown and incident stories lately, so let's stick with that theme. If you found yourself in a pickle and didn't make the right choice, please write in and tell me about it at truckerdump@gmail.com. Better yet, send in an audio comment like Trevor and Vicky both did. In my humble, but always correct opinion, it's always better to hear those kinds of stories from the horse's mouth. Not that I'm calling you a horse or anything, although I guess that'd be better than me calling you an ass, right? Well, as always, thanks for listening and following the podcast. I really appreciate it. And if you think the show doesn't completely suck, please consider telling a friend or coworker about it. So until next time, drive safe and stay out of my way. So hey, you know those rumble strips on the side of the interstate that wake you up when you almost fall asleep and start to veer off the So I guess for those of you who knew, but there's a second component that most of the articles don't go into, and that is a wage subsidy. But there's a second component that most of the articles don't go into, and that is a wage subsidy. Subsidy? Why do I keep saying subsidy? Subsidy. But there's a second component that most of the articles don't go into, and that is a wage subsidy. Subsidy. Said it again. He commented about the last podcast we talked about. There was a new.